In this lesson, we're going to look at the apply function, which is a useful tool also in Pandas, in the Pandas data frame module. And to give a little context for apply, it's a way of applying a function to a subset of our data or the entire data frame. But usually, if we have a function, we generally have a variable in mind that we would like to change or manipulate in a specific way. And this example is going to hopefully underscore some some ultimate analysis goals that for which it would be useful to use the apply function. So in this case, our goal is to figure out what % of countries have a life expectancy below 50. So that is not a function that's built into Python or Pandas. That's a function we have to create. Once we've identified countries that have a life expectancy below 50, we could perform a final summary where we calculate what % of countries have a life expectancy below 50. So let's start off by importing some libraries as usual. I'll use the Gapminder and create data frame, and I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to use a subset of the data, and I'm just going to look at 2007. Here's my function. There are faster ways to do this, and I'm sure many of you can think of them, but I wanted to have a function where the process looked really intuitive. So feel free to create your own slightly more efficient function. All we're doing here is examining a number and seeing if it's less than 50, returning a 0 if it's not, and then a 1 if it is less than 50. And we can think of this as sort of an indicator or Boolean value that we can attach to each of the life expectancy values in our data set. And then from there, we can aggregate. So let's just run the function to make sure it's stored. Here's where we use the apply function. And I'm setting a variable called GM_low, Gapminder low life expectancy. But I'm just using low. I maybe could have thought of a better name, but I guess we'll just try to remember that. And I'm taking from the Gapminder 07 data frame. I'm specifying the column I'd like to apply this to with the life expectancy selection, and then I'm using apply dot notation to chain the methods together, and then within the parentheses I decide what function I want to use. So I want to use the function that I just created called below. Notice I don't have to use parentheses after the function, so that's a little bit unique to this apply method. And then I'm just going to examine the data. So now I've created a column of indicator values. And Python's going to yell at me for doing this. I need to find a better way to do it, which I will. But for the sake of time, I'm going to run this. And what I'm doing here is I'm setting a new column, and I'm calling it low. And I'm giving it the values that I just created in the GM_low variable. Okay, it's mad at me, but I do have the column with my indicators. So now that's part of the data frame. It occurs to me that I could have left this step out and just perform this step right here. There's really actually no need in this case to add it to the data frame. And here I'm calculating the percentage. What % of countries have a life expectancy below 50? In order to do that, I'm taking the sum of all the ones, right? So adding up the total for this column and dividing it by the number of items in that column. So I've got a sum function, and I have the count function to get the total for that column. and it gives me 13% of countries. So 13% of countries have life expectancy below 50. Okay, and then there's an exercise for you to try.